Welcome back. So I've wanted something for a long time that I haven't got. The last couple of weeks I've been putting together a kit from Laser Cut Perspex. Here it is. This is the McQuarrie concept speeder that I wanted to copy and make a studio scale model. I'm going to do a 1/12 scale to fit these 6-inch figures so that I can have a couple of pilots in there. It's an intriguing shape, this. It's a lot more angular than the Snowspeeder seen in the movie, and there's a lot of different idents on this. There's no secondary hump section at the front. There's a little scoop thing here. These guns are much more engine-like than the guns on the original Snowspeeder or the ones in the movie. Everything's different. It's got 2 sets of engines at the back, 2 guns. It's got a funky hood on the cockpit with a little peak that sticks out over the front that I would imagine like a little air scoop on the front there. And these wings appear to be separate on the outside to the main body. Now, judging by the lack of detail on here, I'm thinking that Ralph McQuarrie on this picture was thinking of these wings here as being the control surfaces. And it looks like there's 3 hinges, one at the back here, one here, and another one just about here. Now I'm imagining that that wing does this on both sides. If we look at the perspective, this wing on this side is considerably flatter, much more flatter orientated. If it was parallel to this surface here, it wouldn't be showing on the opposite side. So I'm thinking this is put here just as an idea to show designers and builders what he would be after, and all these other sections are different. It's much taller at the front. Actually, I think it's a really nice shape. So what I've done is I've copied that into a 3D form just to try and resolve the surfaces with each other. So this was the first attempt. Once you start to mess with these surfaces and see how they work, you can see how it starts to do strange things like tapers off the cockpit, which is kind of nice. And as we move through the evolution of this, as I start looking at all the various different surfaces and how they interact, I'm starting to pull it together into a shape that I like. This one's far too tall on the top. This side is so angular here that it interrupts the whole kind of aesthetic of the thing, and you can't get this section wide enough here to match the reference whilst keeping this angle here. So the 2 gun lines on both sides are not parallel. They have to focus in a little bit. So I put a couple of degrees on those, which sets the angle of this edge of the wall, and I can't get the depth that I want here without these 2 being completely triangular and pointing together at the front. So I fudged on that one, moved along. Next one I came up with was this. It's looking a little bit more full, a bit more like the original one. And then I ended up with another couple of evolutions, getting to this section here, which is what I eventually decided upon for the angles of the body and the angles of the guns. I was quite happy with the way that looked. So once I'd got all the various panels to look correct in relation to each other, to give me the right kind of shape and form and size of the sides, I then went into a little bit more depth to produce this one. This is the current file that I'm working on, and you can now see the construction of this. If I strip away the main body, you can see now there are 4 main bulkheads. So this is the rear bulkhead, obviously. You can see now the position of the pivots inside each one of these wings, and those pivots run along a common, which is the gun. Details for the vents have been put into those panels now, and then that gives me a set of laser cut pieces to put together. So these are the laser cutting files for this. You can see it's quite comprehensive. The lower surface is fairly complex. All the blue lines are etch lines for panel details. So each one of the panels is laid out, gives you an accurate marking if you need to glue ones on, or it just leaves the panel lines there if you need them. So just extra detail. The wing surfaces, the rear section behind the cockpit with a gun mount. Cockpit. Cockpit comes in 3 sections. The first bit is this, 2mm perspex, clear. Second piece, the outer frame, is 1mm plastic card, and the inner frame is 1mm plastic card as well. This is to give you the lovely relief that you can see on the inside of this cockpit here. There's a glass section and 2 other layers to the thickness of this cockpit. So that should add that detail, and it also allows me to step up the detail inside on this section of the dash, which is really cool. These are more sections for the cockpit dashboard, etched and cut from clear, so you can illuminate that if you need to and add greeblies. All these other sections here are for the seat. And working now on the final greeblies for the rear vents. So once you've got your CAD model all nicely done, then you get something along the lines of this. So this is what I've eventually come up with. This is the first build of the files that I just showed you. As I've been building this, I've been modifying the files to make them fit a little bit nicer. You don't know until you get into the real world how the seams are going to attach, how the cockpit's going to fit, how you're going to make all these little greeblies for the sections on the design, and obviously the guns and all the rest of it. So we're 90% of the way there. These wings move, which is what I think Mr. McQuarrie envisaged with this design, but I could be wrong. So, you know, if you want to build it and leave the wings solid, you can. There's a few little things that I've changed and tweaked. Nothing too dramatic, I've got to be honest with you. I think I like the way that it looks at the moment. It's a big size. I've got to keep all these parts separate because I'm now going to start making molds for these. So all these parts, all the engine pieces, these have all been made from vintage parts of model kits to try and keep the same era. So no 3D printing on this whatsoever. Everything's scratch built using model kits that were available at the time that this was designed and Star Wars was done. So it's kind of sits in line. The only thing that is a modern interpretation is Mr. Skywalker, and he's one of the Black Series 6-inch figures, and in true Snowspeeder style he has to have his feet taken off. So there we go, he fits in there. There's another one to go in the back, and working on the dashboard and all the rest of it. So lots of detailed parts to cast, so that when I make a few limited edition kits of this, all the parts should be there. I'm working at the moment on the rear gun pivot. This is the start of it, fits into this slot at the back here. So all these panels on here are acrylic. Really nice, super flat. The paint sticks to it like hell. It's incredibly great stuff to paint. And yeah, that's my interpretation so far. On the next incarnation, I'm putting a lot of detail into here. There'll be a cutout inside here with a large greebly cast piece that has the fans and all the pipes and all the rest of it on it. I'm going to scratch build that and detail the final bits of these rear engines and also this back wall here. So yeah, I'll give you an update on that once I start the painting. I'm still working through this now to try and refine the parts so that when it all goes together it fits really nice and snug. We get the magnets into there so that that section sits nicely on it, and ignore the paint job. I've not really put too much time into this. It's been a quick blast of colour just to see how it looks. But once all these parts start to fit onto there, I think it's a fairly faithful reproduction of Mr. McQuarrie's concept speeder. And to be honest, I think it looks nicer than the one that was in the movie. But there you go. That's just my thoughts on it. So stick with it. There'll be another video of this in the next couple of days with me just throwing a bit of paint at it just to see how it looks as a finished model. The next thing I've got to do is build these rear guns here, get the moulds ready for those so that it can have brass tubes in the back, and a few more details on these guns to put on, but everything is pretty much there. On the bottom surface of this, I've got to be careful now not to drop all my parts, so let's just take all the loose stuff off. Still being ready and prepped for moulding this, so you have to bear with me. On the bottom, what I've got is this. There's never an image of this particular concept drawing from the bottom, so I've interpreted it as best I can. You see the blank panel with no etch lines there? When I put it together, I stuck that one in upside down because it was so transparent. It looked like the etching was on this side, but obviously when I put the paint on, oh, it's gone. So yeah, it's something to bear in mind when you're building one of these, that the transparency of the material really can throw you out sometimes. But conversely, for the alignment of all the little hinges, you can use the transparency to line all those up and glue them together. So it does have its pros and cons. Got a vent in the back there and a few other details to add underneath, a little bit of ventage to put on the front, but it's looking pretty good. So it's a big thing. Get that onto there again. I think it looks the part. Once it gets all its various pieces on, I think it's going to look the business. So there you have it. That's the first stage of how to build your own model kit. I hope you like it. There is probably 2 weeks of graft in that so far to pull it to this stage to get it ready for moulding and almost ready for moulding. Then all the files have been tweaked to make it easier to build. A few little details that I've changed because I wasn't happy with how they looked on this one. So hope you like it. Thank you for watching. I'll be doing an update on this in the next couple of days. Hope you like it.